Yes, good afternoon again. We'll quickly start the session for today. And thank you so much for joining us during your Friday afternoon. Really appreciate it. Let's quickly get going. And the purpose of this information session is to, I have received some request about recording the session. It's not necessary because we'll be recording this anyhow, and we'll be sharing a recording with all of you later on. So, as I mentioned before, the purpose of this session is to inform you about how the process works to apply for Sweden and Finland. If you go through us, we have already started our recruitment period from the first day of June, and we are about to close down the period on the 21st of December. So, you have 2 more weeks remaining to make a decision whether to apply or not. And in case if you decide to apply, this is the time to make that decision. I can continue to place new applications through us until 21st of December. So let's keep moving forward. I know most of you have arrived here from um, social media channels. To explain a bit about us, we've been in the operation for the last 15 years. We're probably one of the first couple of firms in Sri Lanka at the time to promote higher education in Sweden. And we're definitely the first in Sri Lanka to promote higher education in Finland, which is so much of a popular destination nowadays. And we do have about over 1 billion rupees worth of scholarships under our belt. We have processed over 2,000 Sri Lankan nationals for these countries, mainly Sweden and Finland. We also have processed some for countries like Norway and Estonia as well. So it's our 15th year, and we are currently into the last couple of weeks to accept new applications for next fall. So I have already explained about this, but I want to pay attention to the last part of this. The one of the primary reasons why we promote these information sessions months in advance is because there are some requirements to fulfill when applying for these countries. You may need to, organize English proficiency test scores. You may need to organize supplementary test scores like SAT and GMAT for certain options. So the reasons why we promote these processes months in advance is because we need to educate all the potential applicants about the pros and cons, the basic requirements, the financial requirements, and pretty much every single piece of information they need to know before making a decision to study abroad. So that's we have almost reached our annual target anyways, but we have the capacity to accept about 10, maybe 12, 13 maximum applicants. And they do have time till 21st of December to make a decision. So how the process looks like if you apply through us. Here, the process can be divided into two primary parts. Most of our clients they actually apply for masters. That's our primary market. I would say about 90 to 95% of our clients are the ones who would apply for masters programs. We also have about 5 to 10% max who want to apply for bachelors. So I clear up the bachelor's requirements first. Generally, you need to have passed all subjects at Sri Lankan GCE levels. That's the primary requirement to apply for a bachelor's in these countries. And if you think about countries like Sweden, there's a clear provision. If you have passed general English as a subject, you can apply without providing any sort of an English proficiency test score like IELTS or PTE. Whereas when it comes to Finland, in addition to A levels, you also need to have some sort of an IELTS or PTE score. The general requirement for IELTS is 6 for each component, or for some programs 5.5. But the general requirement is about 6 for each component. And if it's PTE, the requirement is to have 59 for each component. So if you have one of the two test scores organized, you can always apply. And then that's the primary requirement for bachelor's. You have to have your A levels If you want to apply for Sweden alone, there's no additional requirements. You can apply with your A-levels provided you have passed general English. But if you want to add Finland into the process, you need to have some sort of an IELTS or PT score. The unfortunate part is I don't think they have test dates before the deadline, even the actual deadline, which is usually in the first week of January, and it'll run through the second or third week of Jan. As far as I know, now all the test dates are fully booked. So unless you have completed your IELTS, it can become difficult to add Finland as an option at this stage. But if there's anyone who has booked a test date already, you can still give it a try. So now let's come back to the master's requirements, which is our primary market anyways. The general requirement to apply for a master's is to have a bachelor's degree. And there they have a country-specific requirement. If you want to apply for Sweden, for an example, they have a country-specific requirement that says if you have a Sri Lankan bachelor's degree, that has to be at least 4 years in length. And in case if you have a general degree, like a 3-year bachelor's, you need to have at least 1 year of master's completed after your bachelor's to apply. That is a requirement applicable to Sweden in case if you have completed the UGC approved local degree. I understand there can be plenty of people around who have completed British offshore degrees in Sri Lanka, sometimes Malaysian degrees or Cambodian degrees. If that's the case, this 3-year degree requirement does not apply to you because there's a clear provision. You can, apply with country-specific requirements from the country where you have completed your bachelor's. So when that becomes applicable, you don't need to have a 4-year bachelor's like the one they expect in Sri Lanka, or the requirement they expect in Sri Lanka. So that's about the length of the degree. This is only applicable for Sweden. If you want to apply with a UGC approved local degree, it has to be 4 years in length, or else if you have a 3-year local degree, you have to have 1 year of master's completed. If anyone else has some sort of foreign qualification obtained in Sri Lanka, you may still apply. The only difference is with Indian degrees. They have the exact same requirements. So if you have graduated from an Indian university and if you have a 3-year bachelor's, you still have that master's requirement in place. For Finland, there's no such a requirement. So even if you have a 3-year degree, you can still apply. But the difference there is in order to apply for a research university in Finland, where our services are limited to anyways, there's 9 research universities. To apply for any of them, you need to have some sort of an above the average GPA. The general requirement is to have at least, I would say second lower on the minimum, or at least a GPA that's closer to a second lower, let's say 2.7, 2.8 out of 3, out of 4. And the IELTS requirement for master's degrees, it depends. If you want to apply for Sweden, if you have passed your general English as a subject during your GCE levels, you can apply for an exemption from providing an IELTS or PT score. But in case if you have failed your general English, the only other way is to use some sort of an English proficiency test score. For Finland, it's a compulsory requirement. As I mentioned before, we only apply for public research universities in Finland. They have 9 research universities, and all 9 universities, if you have a local degree, you would probably need to take up IELTS or PTE. The IELTS requirement for masters is about 6.5, or 6.5 is 6 for each component. And if you are planning on taking up PTE, it's better to have an overall score of 62 with no component less than 59. And the third one is about the ability to pay a tuition fee and study in case if you are admitted without a scholarship, because as some of you may know, our primary focus is always about securing some sort of a scholarship. We try our level best, and that is one of the advantages of these countries is the fact that they have had some sort of free education system that's open for international students during some point of time. If you think about Sweden, 2011 is the year when they introduced their fees. If you think about Finland, it's 2019. We have managed to process at least 700 Sri Lankans during 2000, from the year of 2010 to 2019, and none of them had to pay any tuition fees at all. But surprisingly, Finland became so popular once they introduced their tuition fees. Don't really understand the basis behind it. And the next one is about the GMAT requirement. It is completely optional, but there are some universities. Let's say, for an example, if you want to apply for Aalto University in Finland for a program like business analytics or marketing, they require you to have a GMAT score. There are some Finnish universities like Uppsala University in Sweden, some Swedish universities like Uppsala University in Sweden, University of Gothenburg, and Umeå University, and some programs at Stockholm University as well. They also prefer if you can produce a GMAT score because their selection group one is always based on GMAT for some of the programs. So it works in a way, let's assume if there are 1,000 Sri Lankans applying for the business analytics program at Uppsala University. Let's say, let's recall a program that's where GMAT is not compulsory. Let's think about a program like so the difference there is they have GMAT based group, that's group number one, and then credit based group number two. Let's assume if there are 500 Sri Lankans who want to apply without a GMAT score for these programs, the number of those who have a higher or increased GPA plus GMAT will be somewhere around 20 or 15, mostly below 20. So you definitely have the chances of, standing out from the rest of the Sri Lankans. So your chances of being able to receive an admission for one of these universities becomes very high. So it's the only difference. Having said that, there are plenty of options we can apply without GMAT. And even if you want to take up the test, I don't think we have sufficient time now to meet the deadline. So we can simply forget about this and move forward. The last one is about the ability to pay remaining tuition fees if admitted for a partial scholarship. Let's say if you are, eligible to receive some sort of a partial scholarship, let's say 50% scholarship, you still can pay the remaining tuition fee and study there. But the difference is if you want to pay the remaining tuition fees out of your own pocket, I recommend you to have sufficient funds, at least for the second semester. There are some countries, especially like Sweden, the tuition fee is usually payable uh, after, for the first semester. You can pay for the first semester and go there. But if anyone is going there with the hope of earning a sufficient amount of money to pay for your second semester, you do have a very high probability to fail. The reason is it takes some time to find that first income opportunity in these countries due to the language barrier. So it's always better if you are to go into any of these European countries where English is not the main language, it's a wise move if you can prepare for at least 2 to 3 semesters to go on your own and to prepare for sufficient living expenses, at least for the first 6 months. So that creates some kind of room for you to go out, find that first job. And once you find that first opportunity, then you can think about paying at least a percentage of your tuition fees. So moving forward, I want to talk about the disadvantages of these countries. Obviously, one of the primary disadvantages is probably the language factor because they have their own languages. In Sweden, they have Swedish language. In Finland, they speak Finnish. Most of them, some speak Swedish as well. And that is probably one of the biggest drawbacks in these countries. There's no other way around. If you are intending in living in these countries in the long term, you have no other option but to learn the local language. The second one is about the weather. It is also not something we can control. You have to get used to it. You have to get used to living colder, climate in most parts of the year. The third one is not that applicable nowadays, but this can still be applicable to some. Back in the old days, I used to receive some complaints from my students with things like, Chamak, I'm the only person of color in my entire program, and I don't feel that comfortable, these kind of feedback. But gone are the days when I last received something of that sort, because nowadays, if you think about the remote most university in these countries, you will still find some Sri Lankans, because there's plenty of them, plenty of other South Asians, Indian, Pakistanis. So I don't think this is no longer applicable, but still, it's something you can keep in mind. And the most important one is the last one, difficulties in finding employment. And our thought about that is, if, to be honest, the ability to find a job in any of these European countries entirely depends on your skills. So my advice is, if you come from, let's say, the software industry, or if you come from some sort of an engineering background or R&D background or bioscience background, you may stand increased kind of a probability to be able to find something in these countries. Same for some vocational skill, people who have vocational skills as well. Let's say if you work as a professional chef, or if you work as a professional hairstylist, if one of you, because most of our clients anyways are married. So if the two of you are going together, if one of you have, some kind of handful, or I would say hands-on skills on a particular area like cookery or hairdressing or something similar, you may also have some sort of increased probability to find a job in these countries. But if both of you come from some sort of, let's say, business backgrounds, or create like art related background, political science, development studies, so on and so forth, if both of you have studied such subjects, and if you both of you have engaged in some sort of, let's say, in the public sector, or any private company where you engage in humanities related tasks, I think you do have increased kind of a risk when choosing these European countries. Because it's not because they don't have any opportunities, it's mainly because you have to learn the local language, to a certain extent, in order to increase your chance of being able to find a job. So my advice about employment is, if you come from the software industry, go for it, because Sweden, in fact, is one of the better options you have in the whole of the European Union, because the software industry is pretty good. You can do your own research about it. And Finland also, they do have some opportunities, especially if you come from the ICT industry. It's mostly same for engineers, some disciplines of engineering graduates as well. Let's say if you come from electrical engineering backgrounds, or mechanical or mechatronics, robotics, you may stand some kind of increased probability to find a job offer in these countries. But for the others, you had to think twice, unless if one of you, if the two of you are going together, if one of you sort of come from a technical or some sort of, um, vocational background, you may still feel safer. But for everyone else, I think, unless you have reasonable amount of savings in your hand, and unless you are prepared to learn the language within the shortest possible time, it can become difficult to find employment in these countries. Not applicable to Sweden and Finland alone. It's been the same way in any part of Europe except UK and Ireland. The only advantage you have in those countries is they speak English. Everywhere else, if you go there, you have to be able to learn the local language, and that is an absolute must in order to survive. So let's now talk about the advantage. As I mentioned before, one of the primary advantages of these countries, I think, is the fact that they used to offer free education, in the sense like absolute free education to international students at some point of time. Sweden introduced their fees in 2011, Finland in 2019, Norway in 2023, and even Estonia, which is an excellent option for individual applicants who come from the software industry. even they used to have zero tuition fees for international students. I think they introduced their fees around 2017 or 18, around that time, about a year or two before Finland. So still, most of these countries offer scholarships in large numbers. If you think about a country like Finland, even as of last year, at least 70 or 80% of all our Finnish admission holders had some sort of a scholarship. The minimum amount, as far as I can recall, is from LUT University, and it is about 50% of the original tuition fee. That was the lowest in Finland. Even in Sweden last year, we had sort of an increase of scholarships. I think it happened because they removed Sri Lanka as a country from the list of eligible countries for Swedish Institute scholarships, and we as a firm are a bit known about being able to secure such scholarships. We have at least had like 16 or 17 fully funded SI scholarships during our 15 years time. These are like real fully funded scholarships. You get your tuition fees, you get your living expenses, you get your visa fee released, and you also get a one-time allowance to cover your travel expenses. And we have had about 15 or 16 SI scholarships. And unfortunately, they removed Sri Lanka as a list of, from the list of eligible countries last year. I don't know if that is the reason. There was a sort of an increase of scholarships even in Sweden last year for our applicants. And that's obviously the first biggest advantage we see in this country. It's not that other countries do not offer scholarship, but these countries offer like real, I would say, proper scholarships, and the minimums are usually about 50%, around that range. So I would, I had to mute it. So the second one I see, second advantage is probably social security benefits regardless of your visa, which is sort of pretty common in countries like Sweden and Finland. Let's say if you go there, you do have access to healthcare facilities in the event of hospitalization. You pretty much pay the less or more the same costs that a citizen would pay. Same with schools for children. There's no additional cost involved as such, and even publicly run daycares offer free services most of the times to incoming applicants. That's one of the key advantages I see in these countries, because I know for a fact that most Commonwealth countries, like popular countries, I'm not going to name them, you have to think about paying your school fees for children, paying for their daycares and all that. So compared to that sort of a situation, this is far better for sure. And the other one is about the ability to apply for a work permit, even with an entry-level kind of a job offer. Theoretically, it still remains the same, but it's not a lie. We can still keep this in the presentation, but I don't think it's quite possible. I can explain this. If you think about a country like Sweden, as far as I can remember, until at least 2020, around that time, their requirement to apply for a work permit was 13,250 Swedish kronas, which was kind of a minimum wage that time. I know for a fact that even most of our clients, they ended up applying work permits through employment opportunities like cleaning contracts, housekeeping contracts, like bottom level jobs, jobs that would pay bottom level figure of salary. And it was possible to do it back then. But now they have raised this threshold to about 28,500. So theoretically, you can apply with whatever you find, but no entry-level job will pay you that amount. So now if you want to apply for a work permit in Sweden, you have to either find a sort of a mid-level job, or you have to find some sort of supervisor level job in order to meet that salary requirement. But interestingly, if you happen to work in the ICT industry, or if you end up working as an engineer, or any kind of, if you perform in any kind of professional occupation, every single occupation would pay you more than that. So that's the idea. In Finland, the salary threshold is set currently at about 14,000 euros. Maybe one reason why Finland became so popular lately is because they have a very low salary threshold. prior to this change, which happened last year or year before, the amount you wanted to have to apply for a work permit was around 12,000 euros. That's kind of a minimum wage. So anyone who finds a full-time offer would probably be able to apply for a work permit because any job would pay you more than that. So that is obviously an advantage compared to most other countries because they have specified a threshold. If you find a job offer that pays you more than that, you can apply for a work permit. And then above 4 years on a work permit, you can probably apply for your long stay visa. I already talked about the fourth one, accessible healthcare facilities. But I still recommend you to buy some sort of private insurance if you go into these countries because you may have to pay for doctor, whenever you visit a doctor and all, to they allow, some sort of issues like prolonged waiting times and all that. So it still makes sense if you can buy sort of private insurance. But in the event of hospitalization, you would probably not pay much. I can give you one example. I had a very unfortunate incident with one of our clients long time back. I think about at least 5, 6 years back. He had a stroke, and he had to be in the hospital for about 3 months or so. And he told me the amount he paid at the time of discharging was around 600 Swedish kroners. That time, one SCK was around 20 rupees. So he had to pay about 12,000 rupees out of pocket after being hospitalized for about 3 months. So I don't think it is possible in most countries where you expected to purchase an insurance policy upfront. And I already explained about the other one, free education for your children, including state-funded daycare facilities. And cost of daycares are exactly similar to what a citizen pays if it's a publicly owned one. Ability to study or vocational training, that's also a kind of advantage I see in these countries. Let's say if the husband and wife goes together into these countries, let's assume wife is the one who completes a master's. Husband has a perfect opportunity to learn the language, mostly free of charge, because in countries like Sweden, they do have, even in Finland, they do have a similar system. In Sweden, they have something they call Swedish for Immigrant centers scattered throughout the country, where anyone with a personal number could register and take up language lessons without paying anything. And the advantage is if you acquire a certain level of fluency in the local language, you can complete vocational training without paying anything in the local language, at least in Sweden. And that is also a definite advantage I see in these countries. And the last one is about having an inclusive system in place to absorb immigrants. I was surprised to learn some time back that Sweden, at least 1/3 of Swedish nationals actually born overseas. So I didn't know about it and I was surprised to learn about it. So is it right, good or bad? I don't know. Not going to give you any opinions, but that's how it is. They have design systems in a way that if you really want to integrate, you can learn the language, you can complete some sort of vocational training, gain some skills. You can rely on, employment support systems available to everyone to find sort of an opportunity that will pay you 28,500 Swedish kroners, good enough to apply for a work permit if you plan the process well from the day one. So the next one is about things to be concerned of. I want to, clear up these things before talking about the actual application process. The first one we see is that you must either be on a scholarship or have the ability to pay at least the first 2 semesters. Why? Because as I mentioned before, in countries like Sweden, they only ask you to pay for the first semester. And on average, the tuition fees involved in these countries is about 10 to 15,000 euros. I would say that's roughly about 3.5 to 5 million rupees. And you can pay for the first semester in Sweden, apply for a visa and go there. So what you pay is usually around 1.6, 1.7 million. But if anyone assumes, okay, now I had to pay 1.6 million, I somehow managed to find this and I'll go to Sweden and then, start working there to pay the remaining tuition fees. Chances are very high that you will fail because it will take at least good 2, 3, 4, 5 months sometime to find that first employment opportunity. So unless you already have a working, work from home kind of a contract, you have to have sufficient funds at least for the first 2 or 3 semesters, on the minimum at least for the first 2 semesters. Um, your tuition fee would, the average range is about 10 to 15,000. So you have to have that in your hand, about 3.5 to 5 million, depending on your tuition fees. And then on top of that, you have to think about your living expenses. That's the second one. Sufficient funds to cover up your living expenses, at least for the first 6 months. For an individual applicant, we recommend you to have at least 250,000 into six, which is about 1.5 million. For a family of two, at least like 300,000 into six, about 1.8 million. For a family of three, we recommend you to have at least 350 into six, about 2.1 million. So you must have this in your possession, at least for the first 6 months, because that create some sort of a safer room for you to find that first opportunity. 6 months, when you are provided with full work rights, especially in a country like Sweden, if you have full work rights in a first world country, 6 months should be more than enough for you to find that first opportunity. That's what we believe in. And the third one is willingness to learn the local language and to make local contacts as much as possible. Uh, why? Because, as I mentioned before, you have to have some knowledge in the local language if you want to go out and work, especially in non-technical sectors. It is somewhat different for most of these tech companies because they have truly international workforce. So mostly the language of communication inside the office at least will be English. But when it comes to any other category of job, you have to work on the local language skills. There's no other way around it. And then you also have the advantage of being able to find a job for your spouse. That's also one of the advantages I see in these countries. Let's assume if husband and wife goes together, you don't have to wait till your spouse complete his or her master's or bachelor's. You have the complete freedom to look for a full-time offer. If you can find a full-time job offer, you also have the flexibility to apply for a work permit without waiting for your spouse to complete her academic qualification. So that's also one of the advantages you have in these countries, and something you can plan from the day one. In the past, I've had plenty of applicants. Let's say sometimes the wife comes from, let's say, some sort of a public service background. She works at divisional secretariat or somewhere. She has an art degree, but the husband has a technical background. Maybe he comes from the software industry. So what happens is, if the wife goes there for some sort of, let's say, development studies or humanities related program, she can continue to complete her master's. But if husband can manage to find a job offer from the software industry, husband can become the work permit holder and later add his wife and children, if there's any, to the same visa application. And that's also a definite advantage you have in these countries. And that's also something you can plan if you come from that sort of a background. And last one is more like a request. Our advice is always complete your studies before switching your visa into any other category. Because I can give you one example. Recently, I had this client of mine who's been living in Sweden for a very long time. Out of the blue, she called me and she was like, Chamanka, we had to come to Sri Lanka. I asked why. And she was like, no, my husband was working at this company XYZ. They laid off some employees, and my husband's one of them. And we tried to apply for a student visa, but then we were asked to go out of Sweden and wait until they make their decision. So they had to come back to Sri Lanka, and they were like so stressed out, but luckily they got their visas granted. What she told me is if she completed her bachelor's, which is what she went there for in the first place, if she had it completed, if she wanted to study something else, they would have given her a chance without leaving the country. But what they did instead is back then they studied for about a year and a half, found a job, and then they switched to a work permit. So when they tried to go back to a student visa, they were asked to leave Sweden until that decision is made. So our advice is, especially with some sort of increased numbers, especially with regard to immigration, we recommend you to complete your academic qualification first and then make use of the post-study time, because in Sweden you get about 1 year, in Finland you get 2 years. You can make use of that post-study time to apply for your work permit. So I would like to talk about how the process looks like if you apply through us. Usually the process works in a way they can separate into three different steps. We have the assessment process, the actual application process, and the visa process. The assessment process works in a way we need some of your credentials. If you apply for a bachelor's, we need a copy of your A-levels, O-levels, and a passport copy along with our assessment application and the assessment fee of 35,000 rupees. If you apply for master's, we need you to submit a copy of your bachelor's, transcript, passport copy, our assessment application, and the fee of 35,000. The assessment is all about identifying what possible options we can offer with an increased probability of being able to receive an admission. And then we can list down all these options, the course contents, and the exact documents we need from your end to process you further, come back to you with this list within 14 days time, so you can pick your options from our list and provide the actual documents for the next step, which is the actual application process. What I'm going to do is, anyways, I'm going to send you the assessment instructions along with an assessment form, hopefully by the end of the day today or tomorrow, so you can have a look at it. What happens thereafter is, once we come back with the assessment outcome, you can pick your options, maybe about 3 to 4 options from Sweden. And if you're adding Finland into the process, another 4 to 5 options from Finland. You can then submit these actual documents along with our application fee, which is 185,000 rupees. And then we can initiate the actual process. If you apply on time between mid-March to mid-April next year, you can receive all these admission decisions and then move forward to the visa process. So I already explained what the assessment process is about. This will obviously help us identify what options we can apply with sort of an increased probability to receive an admission. We can then come back to you with a complete list of options, course contents, and all exact documents we need from you and to process you further. The actual application process comes thereafter. Once we provide you with this assessment outcome, you pick your options and submit the supporting documents along with our application fee, which, by the way, in return will guarantee you a placement. Not only that, let's say if you are married and if husband and wife both are equally qualified, you both have bachelor's degrees and you both want to give it a try, especially this will increase your chances of being able to secure a scholarship. I still remember I had this couple from Weimar University. They both had food science related bachelors back then. Both of them ended up applying for Sweden and Finland. Both of them ended up receiving 100%, about 4 or 5 different 100% scholarships back then. It happened because it increases their probability. So instead of applying for about 7 or 8 options, we can now apply for 15 or 16 different options. And that creates almost like 1 out of 16 or 1 out of 15 kind of a probability to receive some sort of a scholarship. But this is applicable only if the two of you have equal kind of qualifications. If two of you have performed well in your bachelor's, we're more than happy to charge from a single person, but still apply for the both of you just to see how it works for a scholarship. By the way, it's not required for the two of you to apply just for the sake of applying. If that's the case, we can always pick the best applicant out of the two, and then that person can become the main applicant. So the third step is about the visa process. What happens here is the Swedish and Finnish visa process both have many similarities than differences. The idea is, if you think about Sweden, You fill up the visa application digitally. You provide certain supporting documents, usually the passport, bank statements, and the admission for an individual applicant. Passport, bank statement, and marriage certificate for the dependent. Passport, bank statement, and birth certificate for any children. There's a small application to fill up. You fill up all the details, we submit the visa online, we pay the application fees online, and then two possible scenarios are there. The best case scenario is they will inform you that, okay, we can grant you a visa. They will not use the word grant. We can provide you with the decision, but then in order to provide you a decision, we need to verify your passport details. So you have to visit the embassy of Sweden in New Delhi. That's the best case scenario. What happens thereafter is you don't need any appointments between Monday to Friday. Every morning you can visit the embassy in New Delhi, provide your thumbprints and photograph. You can come back and then your visa is highly likely to be granted. That's it. That's the end of the process. Once you come back in about 3 weeks' time, you will receive your biometric resident cards through the honorary consul for Sweden in Colombo. That's the best case scenario. The next scenario is they will inform you, okay, we have received your application, but we cannot make a decision without interviewing you physically. Please contact the embassy to organize an appointment. If that is the case, we have to request the embassy for an appointment date and time. You have to visit them on time. You can still bring your dependents along with you because they still take their biometric details. You can face the interview, and then once you come back, if your visa is granted, they will send your biometric cards to the honorary consul in Colombo. There's no second time of going back. If your visa is refused, obviously you have to apply for a tuition fee refund, which is the worst case scenario. But then, having said that, these countries have very low risk, visa kind of processes. The last time I checked the visa stats, the grant rate in Finland is 96.1%. In Sweden, it's closer to that amount. I don't have the official number though. And if you think about our records, we only have had one refusal in our entire 15 years of career for Finland. Unfortunately, I anticipate the second one with the numbers being increased lately. For Sweden, we have had a fair share of refusal, but still, percentage-wise, it's about less than 5%. So for the vast majority, you can still keep high hopes about receiving a visa for any of these countries. And then I'll talk about the Finnish visa process, which is slightly more complex than Sweden now, especially from the days they outsourced the process to VFS. But still, if we plan the process well, we can navigate around and somehow get it done. One key factor to think about when applying for Finnish visa is you have to prepare in advance. You cannot drag the process further. Let's say, for an example, if you have received a 50% scholarship, I don't really recommend you to wait until you receive 100% scholarship because that creates some difficulties with booking an appointment for the visa lodgement, which can become a headache later on. So the safest thing you can do is if you, let's say, have received some sort of a reasonable scholarship offer, you can pick it up, confirm it, and move forward with the visa process as early as possible. That's one thing you can do. And then the process usually works in a way, we have to book an appointment with VFS. We have to load the visa application online. We can pay the visa fee online. And then we have to visit the VFS center in New Delhi on the date, appointment date and time. And then there will be an interview, very short one for most, at least for most applicants, especially the ones who go to public research universities. I've never ever heard of any incident where they were interviewed for an extended time period. Can be different for others, but for our master's applicants, most of the times it's kind of a smooth interview process. So you'll be interviewed and then you can come back to Sri Lanka, wait till the decision is made. And once you receive your grant, you can collect your biometric resident permit card from the VFS Center in Colombo. So both processes are somewhat identical. The only difference is in order to apply for a Finnish resident permit, we have to go through VFS, whereas for a Swedish resident permit, we have to approach embassy, which is far more easier. Even Finland, until 2020-21, the embassy handled everything and the process was far more smooth back then. And the unfortunate news is, I recently saw this article from, I think, Ministry of Justice in Sweden. They have signed up an agreement with VFS to outsource visa processing facilities to VFS. So we never know. Maybe instead of going to the embassy, maybe in about a year or two, we may have to go through VFS in future. Who knows? For the moment, everything is handled through the embassy. They can sometimes take 5, 6, 7 days to respond, but they will still do the job. So I prefer to go through the embassy than going through VFS personally. And let's talk about visa fees because that's also something you have to think of. Usually in Sweden, the visa fees is very straightforward. If you want to apply for a visa, if you're an adult applicant, they charge about 1,500 Swedish kronor, which is about 50,000 rupees. For a child, it's half of that, or 25,000 rupees, around that range. Finland, I don't even recall the exact fees because the fees was, everything was like increased last year. They used to have 350 euro student visa fee, but I think now it's been increased to about 400 or 420 euros. That's roughly around 150,000 something rupees. And then you have for the secondary applicant, used to be a 470 or some euros, but now they have gone up to about 550 if I'm not mistaken. That's roughly about close to 200,000. For a child, it's 220. I think from 220 they have raised it to about 270, which comes to about almost 80,000 rupees. So if you are going as a family, the visa fee alone will cost you at least like good 350 to 400,000, sometimes even more than that for Finland. But my advice is always choose Finland if you have a reasonable amount of scholarship. That's the best case scenario you could see in Finland. If you have at least like 40 or 50% scholarship, it can be a good option to consider. But in all other cases, especially if you come from some sort of technical background, Sweden can sometimes become the better option. It's entirely up to you though. Let's have a summary of the costs involved. As I mentioned before, you have to think about the assessment fee, which is what, 35,000, actual application fee, 185,000. Then the visa fees, it depends on, entirely depends on the option, but usually for Sweden, it's about 50,000 for an adult applicant and half of that for a child. In Finland, it's about close to 200,000 for an individual applicant. Sorry, close to 180,000 for an individual applicant, close to 200,000 for a spouse, and close to 150,000 for a child. Close to 100,000, sorry. And on top of that, you have to think about your air tickets. Usually a one-way ticket to any of these major destinations will cost you on average about 150 to 200,000 nowadays. And for the Indian journey, the average return ticket price is about 100,000, a little bit less or more. And then you have to think about other expenses. Maybe if you want to purchase any insurance, that's something extra. And maybe if you want to, spend some time in New Delhi, you have to think about it. And they also charge you a legalization fee, especially if you want to apply for a Finnish visa. You have to have your marriage certificate, if that is applicable, and the birth certificate of any children legalized. And this legalization charges will cost you on average about 12,000 Sri Lankan rupees per document. So if if you're married, you may have to spend about 12,000 extra to have this marriage certificate legalized. If you have children, you may have to spend about 12,000 additional, in addition to the marriage certificate, obviously, to have the document legalized. That's the idea. And then on top of all this, if you go through us, if you have a scholarship for at least 50% of the fee value, we charge about 450,000 rupees from the main applicant, an extra 100,000 rupees from the spouse. And in case if your scholarship value is below 49%, or in case if you decide to go in as a fee paying applicant, our charges will drop to about 350,000 for the main applicant and extra 100,000 for the co-applicant. To align our policies with that of these countries, we don't really charge anything for children, regardless of the number. One time we had 6 kids joining with their parents to apply, and it was like almost 6 different visa applications, but we didn't still charge them at all. And then on top of this, you have to think about your proof of funds, which is not something I can discuss with you, with exact numbers because it's purely personal. The requirement depends on the individual, but I can give you a figure. So if you're an individual applicant, we recommend you to prepare for at least 15,000 euros, comes to about 5.5 to 6 million rupees. If you're a family of 2, you must have at least good 9 to 9.5 million rupees. If you're a family of 3, we recommend you to have good at least 10 to 10.5 million rupees. It's not the exact amount. We never recommend you to show the exact amount because there's no way every single Sri Lankan could have the exact amount of money estimated by the Swedish government in their bank accounts when applying for visas. So it's always better to have a random figure. But then most of these countries, they're flexible with this proof of fund requirements. So what we normally do is we try to maintain, let's say if we process 50 applications, we always try to maintain 50 different profiles. We don't want every single profile to be identical. So I can give you some sort of a ballpark figure. As I mentioned before, about 5.5 to 6 million for an individual, about 9 to 9.5 for a family of 2, about 10 to 10.5 for a family of 3. How you organize this can entirely depend on the individual. So in case if you're planning on applying, we can have a discussion about this later on. And I won't also give you a summary of the actual costs involved. For an individual applicant, the tuition fee, let's assume, is about 3.5 million. You have to think about your living expenses, at least 1.5 million for a 6-month time period, plus the actual cost. You have to pay us something, and then you have to think about the air ticket to New Delhi, the major air ticket, and the visa fees. So for an individual applicant, these figures will come into a total of about 1.2 million. So if there's an individual applicant who want to go to Finland or Sweden as a fee-paying applicant, we recommend you to have at least 6 million rupees as a budget, which will cover all these figures. Tuition fees for 1 year, 6 months living expenses, bare minimums, and all the actual costs. And if there's 2 of you planning to go together, you have to think about your tuition fees at least for 1 year, living expenses for 6 months, 1.8 million, and the actual cost, which will come to a total of 1.8 million. So a family of 2, we recommend you to have at least good 7.5 million to go together, covering all these expenses, 1 year's worth of tuition fee, 6 months worth of living expenses, and the actual cost. And if you have a child, you have to have some additional expenses. The visa fee will increase. The living expenses will increase at least by 50,000 every month. And then the air tickets cost will increase. So for every child, we recommend you to add at least good 600,000 rupees into the original budget. So if you have a family of 3, I recommend you to have at least good 8 to 8.1 million. Family of 2, maybe 8.5 to 8.6 million. That's the kind of budget you have to have in order to make these countries safer options. So let's quickly talk about the pathways of settling down, because ultimately that's what most of us want to do. So there are 2 major pathways you can do this. You can apply for a work permit. As I mentioned very early, the general requirement is to find a job offer that meets the salary threshold requirement. And about 4 years down the line, you can apply for permanent residency. Nowadays, the initial amount of time you spend as a student that does not really count towards PR. So the average processing time for permanent residency can be about 6 to 7 years, which is perfectly normal. But if you can secure a work permit in these countries, that kind of creates a safer environment. You will know that eventually you'll be able to apply for permanent residency. I can give you one example. I think I shared that on our Facebook page as well. One of our clients, earlier I told you like we have had only one refusal for Finland throughout the 15 years. He's the only refusal. So I'm not going to name him. He might be watching this anyways. So this guy, he had his visa refused in 2017, I think. That's the first and last refusal we have had for Finland. And the next year, he applied for Sweden, received a scholarship from Mid Sweden University. He went there, I think, 2018. So just about a month back, I think in November, he messaged me and said he got permanent residence in Sweden. So I can even count the time. He went there for 2000, I think 18 August intake. He received his PR last November. So it has taken exactly about 7 years' time. So that's the kind of time frame you're looking at. But then if you have a work permit, you don't have to worry much because as I always believe in, if you have a certain skill set that will land you a full-time opportunity in any of these Western countries, you can definitely find another opportunity, even if something goes wrong. And the second one, or most, I would say, probably competitive most pathways to apply for a PhD. It's not something everyone can do. You have to perform well academically, but that's probably one of the safest pathways because PhD is usually considered as equivalent to employment, at least in these countries. You're usually paid a stipend, so you don't have to worry about living expenses. And you will naturally fulfill that waiting time requirement to apply for permanent residency. But it's highly competitive. But applying for a PhD is also one of the pathways you can use to apply for PR. And then there are some exceptional cases as well. For an example, there are certain ways you can establish a business and then apply for your permanent residency. Someone told me in countries like Sweden, if you run a business continuously for 2 years, meet a certain profit turnover requirement, not a profit requirement, a turnover requirement, create one employment opportunity for a period of 2 years, you can apply for permanent residency and all that. Since I do not have any extensive knowledge and since I do not believe these kind of pathways will suit the majority, I'm not going to talk about it. Vast majority of people, they usually apply for their work permits and use that as a gateway to apply for their permanent residence. That's the most commonly used pathway. And then if you want to progress academically, if you believe in yourself, applying for a PhD can also get you around the same way later on because these options are also considered as equivalent to employment. So that's about the common most pathways you have to settle down. I'll take in questions. I'm not going to spend much of your time. I can see about 21 different messages. If you have any questions, you can ask them verbally or you can feel free to send it through the chat box. I'll start quickly answering them one by one. I think, okay, it's about AI recording. Nishantan has a question. How about UK degree? No issues at all. If you have a British offshore degree completed anywhere in Sri Lanka, you can apply. But then we have to look into how you have completed the first 2 years of your bachelor's. What kind of a qualification you have used? If it's a proper high national diploma from a place like Pearson, or if you have national diploma in technology from the University of Moratua, or NDS from Katunayaka, there are multiple qualifications that you can use to complete a top-up. If the first 2 year qualification is something we can accept, your top-up does not matter at all. Yes, Mr. Nishantan.
Yes, because I have the diversified background, business plus IT. I have a
Okay.
bachelor's in international business from UK,
Uh-huh.
Middlesex University with a first class.
Mm-hmm.
After that, after my job losing during the COVID, then I got the chance to do the BCS, British Computer Society. That I completed that PhD diploma level as well. So job background experience also, I have the diversified banking as well as currently I'm working as a software QA engineer.
Okay.
So in
So
that
you
case,
said your bachelor's, sorry to interrupt, but you said your bachelor's is in the field of international business, right?
business. Yes.
Okay. And that's, I believe, is like more like a 1 year qualification?
Actually, you mean the bachelor's, right? Is it so?
Yeah. Mm.
Bachelor's, I have completed graduate diploma management. Then after that, I did the credit transfer. Then I got the chance to do the final year with the Middlesex University.
Where you
The credit
completed
is
your
3 semesters.
GDM from BMS, or what's the
Yeah,
place
yeah,
of?
BMS.
Okay,
BMS.
you can probably apply then, yes. But I will still have to go through your transcript. Because as far as I am aware of it, BMS qualification is endorsed by edXL. So you can apply with that combination, GDM plus final year. But
Yeah.
anyways,
Will they consider? Will they
yeah.
consider the I have the additional qualification like British Computer Society?
No,
Will they
they
consider?
won't. These countries, they have very straightforward selection processes. They don't consider partial qualifications from everyone. Straightforward
Okay.
process. You consider your bachelor's, your units completed during the bachelor's, and probably your GPA and your SOPs. That's all. No other qualifications will be taken into consideration when during the selection process. But these extra credentials will obviously help you when you try to go out and find employment. So that's a
Okay.
different case altogether. In terms
Okay.
of
Okay.
eligibility, if you have completed GDM plus final year, you can definitely give it a try.
Okay. For in term of finding the job opportunities, there won't be no barrier, right? So having the
It can
diversified
create
background.
value. For an example, I have had some applicants who have completed, let's say, physical science degrees in Sri Lanka. They have only completed computer science as a part of their bachelor's, but they had extensive backgrounds in the software industry, so they had no issues whatsoever with finding employment. So when you step out to the market and try to apply for employment opportunities, what they mostly look into is about your working experience. Your credentials does not matter much nowadays. But when you want to apply for a master's, it's always about your bachelor's and bachelor's alone for these countries. And I hope that
Okay.
answers your question.
Yeah, I got the confirmation there. Just share. Could you please share your email or contact numbers?
Yeah, anyways,
The day.
I'll be sending you a recorded version of this session along with the assessment instructions and our contact details. Hopefully by tomorrow. Will do. And thank you. I'll quickly move into the next question. Amanda has a question. Should we have classes of BSc for applying masters? If you want to apply for a master's in Sweden, Amanda, you don't have to really think much about your GPA. But if you want to apply for any of these Finnish research universities, you should either have at least a second lower or GPA closer to a second lower. Why? Because these universities admit only a very limited number. I'm only referring to public research universities. There's 9 of them in Finland, starting from University of Helsinki, Aalto, Tampere, Abo Academy University, Jyväskylä, University of Oulu, University of Eastern Finland, University of Lapland, and there's LUT University, and that's all. So for any of these universities, your GPA matters to them because they admit only a limited number of students every year for every single program. But for Sweden, since there are plenty of options to try, your GPA does not matter much. Even if you have a lower GPA, there are options we can still try and try our best at least to get you admitted into. RK has a question. What about UK top-up degree first class? It depends, RK. As I mentioned before, it depends on what kind of a qualification you have used for your first 2 years. If it is sort of an extensive qualification like a high national diploma or graduate diploma in management or some sort of 3 or 4 year qualification such as NDT from Moratua or NDS from TTI, you can still apply. Kamini has a question, interested in masters on in sports and exercises related program. They have one program at University of Malmo, sports sciences, but they don't have much though. Even I think this year we had a placement for the exact same program. So if your bachelor's is obtained in a similar area, we can try the Malmo option in Sweden. And in Finland also they do have 2 or 3 related options we can try, but those are the only the options we have from both countries. Okay, you're asking for your daughter. Just an assumption, has she completed her bachelor's from University of Sabaragamu? Because the client I talked to you about a while ago, she had the same degree as sports sciences and management from Sabaragamu, if I remember it right. Vijay Surya has a question for science-related masters. Is GMAT required? No, not at all. There are some universities where they ask for GRE, but then even if you want to complete these test scores, I don't think you have enough time to apply for next year because the actual deadlines actually end on 22nd of January for some universities. If you think about a uni like Aalto, the application periods are already open and it'll close in like 3 weeks' time. Safras Hanif has a question. Yes, Safras. Okay, I'll quickly keep moving
Yeah.
forward.
Hi, Chamika. I have a quick question regarding the course of the aircraft engineering. What are the
Mhm.
possibilities? What university is conducting those courses?
Yeah, it's not available. Nothing related to aircraft engineering is available, as far as I recall. There's only one option, probably at Chalmers University. But then there are plenty of other options you can try with a similar degree. For an example, you can definitely apply for mechanical engineering. You can try options like mechatronics sometimes. You can apply for options like industrial engineering and similar areas. But for aircraft engineering, there's no directly related options as such. There's one option, aeronautical engineering, if I'm not mistaken, offered at Chalmers University of Technology, but that's the sole option available.
Thank you, Chamika.
No worries. I'll quickly keep moving forward. Tanushika has a question. What about 2 years of PSN HND and Kingston University topper? Excellent. That's a perfect combination. You can apply without any issue. Amanda has, what about healthcare industry? It depends on your requirements, Amanda. If your bachelor's is in a similar area, you can definitely apply for something related to your bachelor's. Kamini has a question. I missed initial part of this speech. Yeah, what we'll do, Mr. Garman, is anyone who sign up with the session will receive a link to the recorded version later on, hopefully within the day tomorrow, with the application instructions. So you can feel free to refer to that. Thank you. Shireen has a question. How about early childhood educator? There's no much option, Shireen. If you have completed a bachelor's in the field of early childhood education, there are options you can apply for. An example, there are options like early language communication. There are options related to child psychology. There are options related to education, like general education, um, innovative educational methods. But if you are referring to a particular, very specific area, early childhood education, there's a very limited number of options. You can still find enough of options to apply for in case if you have completed a bachelor's degree in the area of early childhood education. Lami has a question. What are the possibilities of if your bachelor's is in environmental science, physics, chemistry? You do have plenty of options. You have environmental science, you have plenty of physics related options. You do have plenty of chemistry related options as well, including options like food science. So it depends entirely on what kind of a bachelor's you have completed. And if you can send us a copy of your transcript, maybe after formal assessment, we can come back and confirm the exact options we can apply for.
Excuse
But
me. So
yeah.
my bachelor's is in environmental science.
Mhm.
So
So
what are the options?
he can generally apply for options like environmental science and management. For an example, JYU University in Finland, they have an option called Corporate Environmental Management, which is a perfect fit. And then you can even consider options like rural development and natural resource management, environmental science. Sometimes, depending on your course contents, you may be able to consider options like forestry. If you have completed, at least, let's say 40, 45 credits related to chemistry, you can even try options like food science, sustainable food systems, so on and so forth. Plenty of options around.
By the way, can I apply for a chemistry master's with a environmental science background?
We have to look into how many units you have completed related to chemistry. Let's say, for an example, if you have completed at least 1/3 of the overall course contents related to chemistry, you may be able to apply for chemistry related ones, yes.
Okay.
So that's something we can
Thank you.
confirm after formal assessment. Thank you, Lame. And Hiruni also has a question. Secondary school teachers, do they have good demand? Well, Hiruni, one of the primary requirements is to learn the local language. So if you feel comfortable learning the local language to an advanced level, good enough for you to teach something to someone in the local language, I think you may have some options. And yeah, of course, Mr. Garmini, I appreciate if you can share recording. That's the first thing I'll do tomorrow. So I will try my level best to send it within today itself, or else you will definitely have it by tomorrow. Priyadarshini has a question. Are there MBBS undergraduate scholarships? No, unfortunately, not at all, Priyadarshini. Our services are usually limited to masters, and they do not have any undergraduate MBBS scholarships. But then I've noticed something recently. I'm not going to explain much because I don't know about the process, but there's a test in Italy that you can take up. If you pass the test, you have the advantage of studying medicine in Italy for a very reasonable amount of tuition fees. That's the only thing I know about it. I don't have any extensive knowledge, but I've seen and I can confirm there's an option in Italy to take up or to study MBBS. So I don't know what the exact medical qualification they have. You can become a medical doctor in Italy for a very reasonable cost, but the rest of it you have to find it out yourself. Of course, we can apply for options like nursing in Finland if you're open to it, but there's no MBBS options, especially in the English language, available to international applicants. Lami also has a question. Can you directly apply for a PhD? There are countries in the world where you can do that. For an example, I know for a fact you can do this in the United States. You can do this in Australia. Might be able to do this in UK, but certainly not in Finland and Sweden. You need at least a master's before applying for a PhD. Safras, what's the minimum qualification to go for a scholarship? I would say a GPA with kind of a higher GPA value, closer to a second low on the minimum. But then again, it depends. For an example, if you think about Swedish Scholarship Institute, or Swedish Institute Scholarship, sorry, they don't no longer consider Sri Lanka as a country of or eligible country. But then back in the old days, when we were able to apply for that, they prioritize those with leadership experience. For an example, I've had plenty of applicants, at least 5, 6, 7 of them, half of overall numbers we have processed. They had no classes for their bachelor's. The advantage they had is they had verifiable evidence of having leadership skills during their university years, during their corporate, experience times, or during, their post-study or, post-university time period. So they had this extensive, verifiable, mostly voluntary or non-voluntary leadership experience that they can prove. And that selection decision was purely, that time it was based on leadership experience, and your GPA had nothing to do with it. But if you want to be considered for a scholarship from a university, GPA can be the key requirement they look into. Sandeepani has a question. Can we apply for a PhD if we have completed MBA in Sri Lanka, you can try here, but if you want to try applying for a PhD in these European countries, it's also better to have, you should have a bachelor's as well. For example, if you are someone who has completed a bachelor's followed by MBA, you do have what it takes. But if you are someone who has straight away completed an MBA based on your working experience without a formal bachelor's, it can become difficult to apply for a PhD in these countries. Tusipan has a question. Yes, Mr. Tusipan.
So can we apply to Norway through you?
You're too late now. The deadline was on 1st of December.
Oh, okay.
For most universities in Norway, the deadline is on 1st of December. It's already finished now. That's why I even didn't talk about Norway. But if you have a class, if you have completed your IELTS, there are some, I think, 1 or 2 remaining universities with their deadlines around the first week of March. You can give it a try yourself. But for us, Norway is we're done with Norway for this year.
Okay, so it will be next year, I think.
Yeah, you can apply after next June. Yeah, can do. Thank you.
Okay.
And Anju has a question. What if you have a visitor visa refuser from UK? It doesn't matter at all. Kamini has a question. Probability of getting a scholarship is for 1 year master's or 2 year master's or with research. It depends. We don't anyway apply for 1 year master's in Sweden because there's a reason for that. I'm not sure if you have studied about it. When you go for a 1 year master, that's starting in the month of August, is usually considered as equivalent to 10 months. So you get your resident permit for 10 months, which is not good enough for you to apply for a personal number. And when you don't have a personal number in Sweden, your life can become very hard because one of the first questions potential employers will ask you when you apply for anything is whether you have a personal number or not. So if you are to go to Sweden, especially for programs starting in the month of August, you better apply for a 2-year program. And Safras has a question, what is the age restriction for applying for work permits? There's no age restriction as such. It depends on your circumstances. For example, our oldest applicant was 53 years old, more than 53 years, almost about 54, when he went to Sweden for his master's in public health. He's married, no kids. He's a medical doctor by profession, and he wanted to simply study public health. Basically, wanted like a unique, different kind of experience than what he used to, and it worked. So it depends on your personal circumstances. As of an official requirement, there's none about age factors. But let's assume if you are in your 50s, if you have like grown-up kids who are about to become adults, then obviously they will look at the visa applications in a different way, probably. So we're not happy to accept such applications. But other than that, there's no any official age requirement as such for these countries. Nate has a question. If I have MBBS, can I get a scholarship for MPH public health? You have to apply and see if it works for you. If you have a higher GPA, yes, you may stand a chance. Carnegie has a question. Does RT University offer scholarships? They do. They do for most of the programs. And they also have something called Finland scholarships, which is more like a fully funded scholarship. They will pay you the tuition fee and they'll pay you a monthly stipend as well. You can apply and see if it works for you if you have higher GPA. But obviously you cannot apply for Aalto alone and expect a scholarship. But the best we can use, we had to always apply for multiple universities. From Sri Jayawardhanapura, Sports Science and Management. Yeah, you can definitely apply for the program I mentioned. We have very limited options, so I don't think it's worth to apply for a very limited number of options and expect a scholarship if that is what you are looking for. But if you're open to, go there in the event of being admitted as a fee-paying applicant, then we can comfortably apply and still assure you an admission. Vijay Surya has a question. Does Sweden has more possibility for 50% scholarship? It's the opposite, actually. Finland, I would say, has more kind of a probability to offer you some sort of a scholarship. The reason is they introduced their tuition fees about 6 years back compared to Sweden, where they introduced their fees almost like 14, 15 years back. You still have increased probability in Finland, at least for a partial scholarship. But it's not always about the scholarship. Let's say, for an example, as I mentioned before, if you come from certain technical backgrounds, even if you have a scholarship from Finland, sometimes Sweden can become the better option. It depends on your personal circumstances. And we're more than happy to have a discussion about it if you call us later on. Sarah has a question. I have a 4-year bachelor's degree in logistics management, GPA 2.5, experience working in sorry, I can't scroll this down. So with a 4-year bachelor's degree in logistics, you can definitely apply for Sweden, sir. There are plenty, not plenty, but at least like good 3-4 options related to logistics. And there are areas in Sweden like Gothenburg is known to have some companies related to logistics, so you can give it a try. Even with a GPA of around 2.5. Vijay Surya has a question, do we do anything with New Zealand? No, we don't. Minosha has a question, which universities are best for masters in cybersecurity? Well, all these universities are equally good, and I'm kind of a person, I don't believe in university rankings. I believe it's always about the skill set you have and your existing experience. Because in today's world, the university rankings does not matter much, at least at the mid-level. It's a different story. Let's say if there's a CEO position and then there's one person from Harvard and one person from University of Monaco, it's a different case, story altogether. But at mid-level, it doesn't matter much. So if that's the case, I believe if you are intending on applying for a scholarship, sometimes applying for ordinary universities will increase your chances of being able to secure a scholarship. The reason is, if you have excellent grades, normally people with above the average grades always, not everyone, but the vast majority will try to pick the best universities possible. Everyone will run after the highest ranking universities, which kind of reduce your chances of being able to secure a scholarship compared to an ordinary university where sometimes you can become the best performing applicant out of all the other applications they have received. So it doesn't matter much. You have cybersecurity at plenty of places. You do have the option at places like Linköping. You have the same option at Skövde University in Sweden. You have the option at Tampere University in Finland. You have the same, if I'm not mistaken, at Aalto University, but then if you are to add Aalto, you have to hurry up because the application period is already open and it will close by the end of the month. There are some options you can apply for, but it's better if you can apply for multiple options altogether, because that will increase the chances of receiving some sort of a scholarship. Safras has a question, can we try on work permit on early childhood education? It depends, Safras. If you find a job that pays you the child threshold requirement, you can apply for a work permit. Dinu has a question, are there any master's degree programs for health informatics? You do, but then very limited number of options. I have seen health informatics at Skövde University in Sweden. Uppsala University, I'm not 100% sure, but I think I've seen a similar program. I know bioinformatics is available at the best university, Karolinska Institute, which is one of the top 10 medical schools in the world. The tuition fees are is one of the most expensive I've seen, but the option is there. And even in Finland, I think bioinformatics is probably available at 1 or 2 universities. So altogether, you'll have about 5 or 6 options to choose from both countries. It's something we can confirm after formal assessment. Sarja has a question, what are the masters can be done with Bachelor of Civil Engineering? You do have options. You can apply for civil, you can apply for structural, you can even go for options like industrial engineering, water engineering, railway engineering. You do have plenty of options from both countries with the civil engineering degree. Jisul Vikramarach has a question, if you have MBA, CIM and CP Australia, if you apply for PhD by age is 55, will age be an issue to get PR? This, as I mentioned before, there's no age requirement in these countries, but we don't necessarily apply for doctoral level programs because it's a far more complex process for us. That's smart. But our services are usually focused at the master's level. But theoretically, if you have a bachelor's and master's all together related to each other, if you have some research experience, if you have some, sort of an English proficiency test score to prove your English skills, you can freely apply for multiple options. Anyone who asks us about applying for a PhD, our advice is get hold of all these qualifications all together, organize them, create a list of PhD opportunities around the world, and apply for multiple number of opportunities across a certain period of time. If you continue to apply for, let's say, at least 50 or 60 different opportunities across 1 year time period, I can guarantee you that you're going to get into one of these opportunities. That's how it works, though. You cannot obviously apply for a single university and wait. And interestingly, you cannot rely on any of these agents because it's a far more complex process. I can give one example. Now, we represent this college in Malta, which is a Commonwealth country. They have a DBA program. I can get any one of you, even without a master's, to apply for a DBA. Very simple process. But it's not a proper research program. DBA is mostly about, they have extensive coursework followed by one research. So these are fee-paying programs. You have to pay a tuition fee. But if you want to apply for a public research university and apply for your, PhD, it's a different requirements that they have. You have to, mostly it works in a way, you have to find a supervisor, get their consent, and then follow their instructions, which is not something anyone can do being a third party. There's no much they can do. I don't know whether there are any specialized kind of people who would play such a role, but for most mainstream agents, applying for a PhD is not something most of them can do because of the same reason. The practical most thing is you create a list of options. I can give you an example. If you visit the university websites in any of these countries, they advertise their PhD positions under either job vacancies or careers page. So you can find out the ongoing openings, and then the opening will usually contain the contact details of the potential research supervisors. Start approaching them and follow the instructions. Gamage has a question, what are the chances of getting accepted into Aalto? It's just one university, one good technical university. It depends on your credential. And when you're applying for multiple options, you can apply Aalto as one option and then see how it works for you. You may receive an admission, you may not. But in all cases, you cannot, of course, apply for Aalto alone at MATE. You have to always apply for multiple options. Hirni has a question, can we apply for a master's with IT bachelor's and IT industry working experience? Yes, there are plenty of options related to IT, ranging from software engineering, information systems, data science, artificial intelligence, machine learning, cybersecurity, even options like robotics and automation. But your eligibility entirely depends on your bachelor's, what exactly you have completed during your bachelor's. So your options can be confirmed if you go through us, obviously after formal assessment. Madhura has a question, are there any opportunity for geography masters? You do, Madhura. If you have completed geography, you have like general geography options, human geography, Even you may touch options like tourism, geography. There are some programs. If you have completed GIS, so Geographical Information Systems, as part of your bachelor's, you may have some GIS related options as well. It depends on your bachelor's again. If it is a general geography option, you can still have plenty of options related to that in both countries. You can even consider options like sustainable development and let's say development studies, of urban community, development of urban communities. There are plenty of options you can apply with a geography degree if you are open to explore them. And you asked for the deadline. This is the time. So if you go through us, we close down for new applications on the 21st of December because we need to leave some room to make the final arrangements. But if you're asking about the actual deadline, 7th of January to 22nd for remaining Finnish universities. But Aalto is already open now. On the 15th, we'll have Tampere and LUT opening up. And University of Helsinki will open up on 2nd of Jan and they will close by the mid of Jan. So if you go through us, this is the time to apply. You can apply until 21st of December. Samadhi has a question. My husband and I both have BSc honors degrees with having almost first classes. We took IELTS. Yeah, if that's the case, we're more than happy to apply for both of you for the same cost. We'll send you the instructions by the day tomorrow. Chamod has a question, how about scholarship for Masters in Nursing in Finland? Well, there's not much options. There's advanced practice nursing. I think the university is, if I'm not mistaken, Abo Academy University. I have to double check though. But you do have other options. If you're open to, let's say, public health, you can apply. There are options like healthcare management, which is something you can apply with a nursing degree. So there are options you can apply, but related to nursing, there's only one I have seen at research universities, that is advanced practice nursing at Abo Academy University. Nate has a question, with MBBS can apply for paid MPH? You certainly can. For some reason, public health is very commonly available program in both countries. You do have the same program in Finland, and you have plenty of MPH options in Sweden. You have namely like Umeå University, they have the exact same program. Stockholm University, they have the exact same program. University of Gothenburg, they have the exact same program. Uppsala University, they have the exact same program. So there are options that you can apply for. Tisul has a question, do you Canada as well? By the way, age is 55. No, Tisul, our services anyways usually focus on Sweden and Finland. That's what we do. That's our core business. And then from time to time, we also promote certain options. Like for an example, we promote some tourism management masters in Malta, because I think it's worth it if someone comes from a tourism background. Malta, in fact, can be a better option than both Sweden and Finland combined. But then it depends on your existing qualifications. So our core business is about processing applicants for Sweden and Finland. Gamini has a question, do you need only IELTS for Finland? Yes, Mr. Gamini. IELTS requirement, or even if you want to take up PT, is applicable only for Finland, because for Sweden, they have a very clear provision. If you have completed general English at GCE A levels, and if you have passed that subject, you can use that to prove your English proficiency level. The only difference is there are some programs like linguistics and English mostly. You cannot use general English to prove your English proficiency level. You have to take up IELTS or PT, and mostly you need a higher score. But for plenty of other programs, you can use your general English to apply for Sweden, so you don't need IELTS. Amal has a question, what are the options available for masters in agriculture related subjects? You do have plenty of options, ranging from general agriculture to sustainable food systems, food and landscapes, rural development and natural resources management. You do have options like forestry, ecology, plenty of options around. And if you have extensive chemistry component, you can even apply for options like food science. Trans has a question, how likely it is to secure 100% scholarship at a uni like Uppsala alone with a G? Doesn't matter even if you are first class or if you are top of the top in your class is very rare kind of an outcome. The reason is, I would say the chance of being able to secure 100% scholarship now from a country like Sweden is less than 3 to 5% max. So if you are to apply, you have to always prepare to go in as a fee-paying applicant. And one thing you can do. The second scenario is you can simply, if you want to secure a scholarship and if you have a first class, you can combine multiple countries together. Can apply for Sweden and then Finland and Norway. If you come from software industry, we can even add Estonia. And if you want to apply on your own, you can add other options as well, Italy, Czech Republic, Germany. And when you do that, that creates a increased probability for you to secure the 100% scholarship. But simply by applying for some of the highest ranking universities, like a couple of unis like Uppsala and Lund, with the hope of expecting a 100% scholarship, you may receive it, but you would have better chances if you apply for multiple options. Safraz has a question: with 25 years of experience in human resources and IT, a master's degree in IT and strong expertise in data analysis using Power BI and advanced Excel, how I can qualify for work permit? Well, that's something you have to apply and see, Mr. Safras. By the look of it, you do have extensive experience, so you may stand a chance, but in all cases, you have to continue to apply for multiple opportunities and see if it works for you. Kushalani has a question: BSc holder in IT from Sleep, planning to migrate with the family, having a 17-year-old child. What's the best country for masters? What are the intakes for these two countries? The issue we have, Kushalani, is your child will be considered an adult soon, so there's always a risk with the options. Having said that, if you want to apply yourself, you can do that. Theoretically, there's no age requirement for children. But then there's no best country as such. If you're asking about a country that has lowest possible visa risk, I would probably say that is Finland. But if you're asking about a country that has better employment opportunities, that would probably be Sweden in your case. So it depends from one possible scenario to another. Tari has a question: are there any food science? Plenty of options, Tari. You do have in Sweden, you have food science and technology offered at about a couple of universities. Mostly Lund University has the exact same program. Swedish University of Agriculture Science, they do have some programs you can apply for. In Finland, you have the program mainly at two different universities. You have food development at University of Turku. University of Helsinki offers two programs: food science and then food and human nutrition. All these options is something you can apply for with your bachelor's. RK has a question: if I'm following a master's program in Sri Lanka, fully online and part-time program on weekends, which I can follow even from abroad, can I still apply for master's in Sweden? Yeah, your master's does not matter as long as you don't apply for the same master's in these countries. For an example, if you complete something like MBA, but if you want to apply for a master's qualification in information technology in Sweden or Finland, you can still do that and justify the reasons why you're doing that. I have another question. Do you have to apply for a PhD through professional professors, IB relevant university? Mostly for these countries, you have to find a supervisor and then apply, yes. So looks like those are the questions I have for today. And yeah, I'll quickly wrap this up. What I'm going to do is I will send you the assessment instructions along with the application instructions, plus a link to the recording, hopefully within the morning hours tomorrow. Thank you so much, Mr. Gamini, for your feedback. Really appreciate it. And I'm happy that I, managed to contribute some, ideas and thoughts. So thanks again. And I'm going to finish this for the moment and we'll be in touch. I'll send you all the instructions by the morning hours tomorrow. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thank you for the valuable insights. Good night.